hours. This was after Polish officials rejected the paperwork for weapons that were on board, reportedly wanting original permits, not copies. Let's get the latest. We're joined by SABC News reporter Samkela Maseko, who is on that plane. Samkela, where are you and the others now? What's the latest?
At the hotel where we are stationed, we are anticipating to return and to leave Warsaw tomorrow morning in the early hours to head back to South Africa. Unfortunately, we could no longer proceed with the covering of the Road to Peace mission by President Ramaphosa. In fact, if one comes to think, we never even covered the mission at all because we did not go to Ukraine and Kyiv, where he was yesterday. We did not go to St. Petersburg, where he is currently, and where we will later on this evening have a bilateral meeting with President Vladimir Putin, where they will discuss the upcoming BRICS summit and South Africa's stance when it comes to the warrant of arrest that has been issued by the International Criminal Court, which has effectively seen us here being held hostage, if one may say, or in the plane for about 26 hours by the Polish government. When you look at the deep political and diplomatic relations between the United States of America and Poland, they are very strong. When you look at the deep diplomatic and historical political relations between South Africa and the Russian Federation, they are very strong. So President Ramaphosa goes into St. Petersburg going to speak to an ally of South Africa, an ally of the liberation movement, which is in government within South Africa. So it essentially gives you that perspective that President Putin and President Ramaphosa's bilateral meeting will overshadow that of the 6 African heads of state that are going to be meeting with him in this Road to Peace mission that encompasses Ukraine and Russia and some of the 10 non-negotiable points that have been raised by President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. And President Vladimir Putin launched some airstrikes yesterday when the African presidents were in Kyiv. So the de-escalation of the war is not coming to the fore as the African presidents would have hoped.
All right. Can you confirm that this is about flight clearance, the fact that you and the security detail are not able to join? What were the logistics involved? And I'm interested to know, was there flight clearance if the plane had not been held up in Warsaw? Would the journey have been easy, or was that something that was always going to be outstanding?
The SA aircraft that we came with to Poland would have never been able to fly directly to Russia or from Poland to Russia because it had no insurance to do so. And it has to go back to South Africa for it to be serviced so that it is not grounded due to aviation routes. But also on the issue of a flight clearance that the Hungarian government refused to give South Africa and the chartered aircraft that we're supposed to hop onto and exchange onto from Warsaw Public Airport, that aircraft never arrived. But if that aircraft arrived, Hungary is in the south and Russia is in the north of Eastern Europe. So it's unclear why we would fly to the south instead of going to the north, going to St. Petersburg. For instance, if you look at this particular, I'm going to look at this particular map that I have that explains the geographical location of Russia and also the Russian Federation and also of Hungary is towards the south of Poland. And also the Russian Federation is towards the north of Poland. It would mean that if we were to leave Warsaw or to leave Poland, going to the Russian Federation, we'd have to pass through Belarus or Lithuania or Latvia or Estonia. So I don't fully understand the issue of the flyover clearance of Hungary and the Russian Federation, but those whom are within the aviation space would have to explain that particular matter.
Okay, so is this being told to you by the South African security personnel? Because I'm interested, when you speak to them, are they giving you a sense of how embarrassing this has been for South Africa that they are not allowed to join? And to what extent are they saying, has it compromised the safety of the president?
Well, let's just correct one point. I don't think South Africa has not been able to join because the president has been able to go to Ukraine, and the presidential staff, Vincent Magwenya, Ati Galeva, Minister Naledi Pandor, they all accompanied the president in Ukraine. But also the president was also able to go to Russia. The issue is the president was left rather naked when it comes to his security. His security detail was very thin, but he was still able to continue with the task at hand that he had been set out to do by the African continent and by the delegation of African heads of state that he was leading within this specific delegation. The issue then becomes the diplomatic relations between South Africa and Poland. Knowing that when we landed first in Warsaw. 30 minutes later, President Ramaphosa landed in Warsaw, coming from Geneva in Switzerland from the ILO conference where he addressed. Then he went to have a meeting with the Polish president at the presidential palace, which that meeting lasted about 20 minutes. And then from there, the president jetted off to Zoł, which is another town in Poland, to catch a train to be able to make it to Kyiv on time, which was a 15-hour train ride with other African presidents. So on that aspect of him, he's been able to perform his functions. But on the diplomatic relations, where those diplomatic relations have soured, through the words of Wally Rueda, who is the head of the Presidential Protection Services of President Ramaphosa, he says that the Polish government, one, is racist. They stripped naked a woman who works for the Presidential Protection Services, who was trying to gain access to the plane in order to assist us and the Presidential Protection Services team and the task force that was on board. But the Polish government was not playing ball because of allegations of serious weapons that were on the aircraft, which are the tools of trade of the Presidential Protection Services, which the Polish government says those tools of trade or those guns or those weapons were not declared to them. And you'd also remember that with the Polish government having strong diplomatic relations and economic relations with the United States of America, it is the United States of America's ambassador in South Africa who came out and alleged that Lady R, which was a Russian warship that docked in the Western Cape, that warship came to collect guns from South Africa, which the South African government has refuted and has set up a commission of inquiry to look into that particular matter, and also has given a task and has asked the American government and the ambassador to provide any evidence or any proof that indeed South Africa supplied any weapons to Russia for them to be assisted in this war with Ukraine. So the suspicion is there that the South African aircraft that would have been able to offload some of its cargo from the SAA aircraft to the new chartered plane to go to St. Petersburg, that flight may, in what is perceived to be diplomatic terms, may in a sense have been going there to leave weapons to the Russian Federation again, because they just wanted to check that and to check what kind of weapons that were in that particular aircraft. So that suspicion of South Africa giving and assisting the Russian Federation with weapons has not gone away. And that is what is there and is causing the diplomatic row between the Polish government and the South African government and the United States of America and the government in South Africa, particularly knowing that the governing party, through its own Secretary General and some of its leaders, has been engaging the ambassador of Ukraine and engaging the ambassador of the United States of America on this very same issue, which has escalated to what we are seeing happening here today in Poland, and with us being detained in an aircraft for over 26 hours. Everything relates around diplomatic relations and how South Africa is perceived not to be non-aligned, but to be more sympathetic to the cause of the Russian Federation due to the historical political ties that South Africa and the liberation movement in our country has with the Russian Federation.
All right. Well, the upshot, unfortunately, you will not be joining the president. But if we don't chat to you before then, Samkela, then we'll see you back in South Africa. That was SABC's news political report.